Hello and welcome to the Why Postliberalism Failed podcast. This is season two, episode nine. Today is September 12th, 2025. We're going to have a relatively brief episode today because my co author, Thomas Howes, is back in session and the classes are kind of kicking him in the you know what. But how are you doing otherwise, Mr. Howes?
Well, I'm doing okay. I'm worried about our country right now. We're recording this just a couple days after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So it's been troubling to see that that awful murder of him. But then also the reaction of it's very troubling as well. So
Yeah, so Kirk died on September 10th. It's now the 12th, like I said earlier. And for context, normally, when you record podcasts, you try not to record on things that are like this one, at least a podcast like this one. You don't try to record on things that are very time sensitive because it sort of makes the appeal of the show go down. But this is unavoidable for us. But by the 12th, things are going to have developed well after what we know today. And just so you know, the context for now, they've apprehended the subject. I don't have his name in front of me, but we have it. It's public
Tyler
information.
Robinson.
Tyler Robinson. He was from Southern Utah. Um, and the police and the governor had made an announcement. Kash Patel made an announcement. That was a few hours ago. I actually watched it.
Mhm.
Kash Patel like almost burst into tears. It was very hard to watch. Um, and the response politically, especially in online circles, which is very predictable, has been unhinged.
Mhm.
And the governor of Utah, his name I've suddenly
Spencer
forgotten.
Cox.
Yeah, Spencer Cox actually commented on his concern that we like are at a fork in the road, and this could be what he hopes would be an indication of how little sense it makes to engage in political violence of this sort. Nothing was gained from this,
Mhm.
and only losses were incurred, tragic losses. He said, or we're going to potentially sort of repeat the kind of political violence that consumed the 1960s through the 1970s. The United States has a very long history at that point of forms of political violence, especially in terms of assassinations. Something that's much easier to do in the United States because of um, the sheer volume of firearms. And in many cases, I'm not sure of the laws in Utah, relative ease in acquiring them. So I live in Tennessee, and all I have to do to get a firearm, if I don't have any felonies, is just go buy one, right? A lot of places don't really have very significant licensing. And I think sometimes people forget this because a large number of people who work in media live in places like New York, where it's very difficult to acquire them. But anyway, that's just an aside. And one of the people who responded to this, who is an extremely highly followed figure online, he's got 137,000 followers, is an anonymous ish person, James Kirkpatrick. He's the host of the American Renaissance podcast, Identity Politics. His namesake is from a anti-civil rights activist from the mid 20th century who actually at one point debated Martin Luther King. I'm not sure if that's his actual name, or if he's named after the guy, or if that's his pseudonym. But he made a post uh, shortly, after I think news of Kirk's death came out. Is Jose Calvo Sotelo a name from history that comes to mind?
Mhm.
Who's that, Thomas?
Well, he was considered the leader of the nationalist coalition after the election of 1936. And I can't remember which one of them, but one of the groups within the left-wing coalition, the Popular Front, it wasn't a state act, it was an act of one of the groups, assassinated him in retaliation for the assassination of I cannot remember who the first person to get assassinated was. It was a retaliation.
Yeah, it was Jose Castillo.
Jose Castillo. And this was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, that the people who were on the fence about starting a coup attempt against the Republican government in Spain decided to go forward with it, and they had their failed coup attempt, which ended up sparking the Spanish Civil War.
And as it happens, the Sotelo murder is actually in the book
Hmm.
that Thomas and I are nearly finished with. Really, I'm the only person who's left here, and I have like the absolutely massacred chapter that I need to add things to. It's completely written all over to fix. Reeks of like stale cigar smoke. But this part is finished.
I wish we could, share that cigar smoked smell with the published book for everyone, James.
Might
That
have
would
to
be.
take a pretty long break from any kind of tobacco product when this is all over because my goodness. But
Hmm.
the paragraph from the book is during the spring of 1936, and we have to go through this to make sure we get all the dates right. So if there are some errors here, understand that like this is a finished composition, but we need to also go through with fact checking. During the spring of 1936, elections produced a majority for the Popular Front. This is in Spain, a coalition of liberal, socialist, and communist parties, and reduced CEDA, which was the right wing coalition, and the allied right wing integralists, Carlists, and Phalangists to a state of near powerlessness. On July 12th, Phalangists murdered Jose Castilla, who led the Spanish police. The following day, the police avenged the death by kidnapping and murdering Jose Calvo Sotelo, who led the anti-republican efforts in the Cortes, the name of the Spanish parliament. Sotelo's murder infuriated anti-republican elements in the army, and they decided to push their designs for a coup d'etat, while also bolstering support for the army to do so among the Spanish public. On July 27th, the coup began. So the thing about Kirkpatrick is that he has a massive reach, and he's making an analogy to the assassination of a elected officer to the Spanish national government. That's
Hmm.
not analogous to Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was a private citizen who engaged in public debates um, at college campuses, such as the one at UVU, Utah Valley
Yeah.
University. And the political conditions in Spain were of near collapse.
Hmm.
And they always were pretty
Yeah.
much after Napoleon.
Hmm.
Spain was almost a failed state, whereas the United States is not
Hmm.
in that condition. And so, what Kirkpatrick is actually wanting here is he wants there to be a civil war, and he wants other people to want that.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, Thomas, would you describe the Spanish Civil War as a good experience for the people involved?
Oh, oh no. It was it was terrible. But Cranky Federalist, we've talked mentioned him before. He had a good point. He says that, the American Civil War, although it was like 600,000 American deaths, the most deaths of any American war, um, was relatively benign compared to most civil wars. As far as like the way that it was fought, you had actual soldiers, you were on battlefields, right? People were prepared for it. That people were drafted for, of the sort of that age group, where people go off to war and they have the testosterone to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like those are the things that are like normal. It was very standard war because it was really a war between the states. Most civil wars are not like that, and any civil war today would not be like that. Most of them are more like terrorist acts against each other, within family members going against one another, neighborhoods divided against each other. It gets very, very chaotic, bloody, awful for everyone involved. So yeah, you do not want the Spanish Civil War here at all. And that's what it would take. Because some of these people were saying that we cannot coexist with these people anymore. So that we need to get rid of, and they'd say the left, right? They're not just talking about some radical groups within the left. They're talking about the left, which is millions, tens of millions of people that this would, be, right? If you say you can't coexist with them, they have to leave. That's a civil war. That would be tens of millions of people, right? You're dealing with. There would be casualties like we've never seen anything before, and it would be the most brutal thing you could imagine. And it's just not, first of all, it's not going to happen, but if you even try to make it happen, it would be awful, awful thing.
And it
So
speaks.
this
Oh,
irresponsible for this person to bring that, to say that to his following. Sorry.
there's and Sotelo's a deep cut for most people. I mean, like if you do Spanish Civil War stuff, it's not. But as I've learned, it's not like I'm trying to claim myself as some kind of like leading figure in the research on that stuff. I just read the sources. Uh, Sotelo's a deep cut, and it really does it reveal the degree to which Franco has captured the imagination of so many of these people. You know, the talk of a Protestant Franco from Abatoy a couple years ago, and then Pine Sap sort of celebrating
Yeah.
him as this sort of um, um, figure, and we did a couple episodes on that, the one that we did, and
Hmm.
then the one we did with Victoria.
It,
Um, and
Jack Posobiec, is that how you say his name?
yeah,
He also promotes Franco. He's a big Franco promoter to his following as well.
yeah, and Franco was terrible. I mean, he was,
Hmm.
and so he's almost like an idol. He's almost like this sort of like imagined Franco that they're talking about, not really the actual figure. They imagine this sort of defender of the right who uses
Yeah.
force to do so, when really he was the third in line behind two dead generals who murdered lots of people and kidnapped their children. I mean, like, is
Hmm.
that what? And so, like, when you read these kinds of efforts to ramp up um, the stakes for political violence, you would think um, that that the example of Charlie Kirk would dissuade them.
Hmm.
You know, we actually see what that violence looks like and the human cost just on his own family.
Yeah.
Um, but no.
Hmm.
And the line that's been sticking with me from our Victoria Holmes episode that she said almost casually was, "It's not just an ideology; it's a content strategy."
Hmm.
Really rings in my head with this sort of thing where, you know, if you monetize your position on X, if you run a podcast like this guy does, all of the financial incentives are for immoderation. And so when people feel anger at the death of an innocent man, you're there to profit from it. And that's
Hmm.
really what's behind this Sotelo reference, is that
Yeah.
he hopes to profit from this. So
Hmm.
he's, you know, just as guilty of that as the people who are selling T-shirts that have Kirk's face from the video getting shot.
Yeah.
Those people on the left selling those T-shirts, this guy's doing the same thing for the right.
Yeah, that's right. And well, and then there's apparently foreign bad faith foreign actors are getting involved in this. I think they've well, there was a Russia Today thing that came out saying, that was trying to get people. It was had images from this thing that was trying to get us to fight back against the left because of this. So there it was like it was they want us to be in chaos. They want us to be in civil war. They want us to weaken America through this. And I mean, they've been moderately successful. Hopefully it doesn't get to a full hot civil war. People are talking like it's a civil war though. If you ever read I've shared this with you earlier, or we saw this earlier, James. If you read Thucydides, when they talk about the civil war in
The
Corcyra,
Corsaira, yeah, that's
Corcyra
very good.
and and the way they talk about how the people thought and spoke at the time, it sounds like these people, right? Where anybody who calls for any moderation or to be sure that this person's actually guilty or anything, they're seen as a traitor and suspect, right? Because the mentality is you don't get in our way. We have an enemy here that needs to be defeated. And if you read the story of the Civil War in Corcyra, um, the one side basically obliterates the other side. And even to the Athenians were looking from the outsiders, they're like, "Wow, this was pretty hardcore." That was right. It was clear to Thucydides even at the time that the sort of absolute hatred of each side for one another, especially was something barbaric, right? And that's what you see in the Spanish Civil War, and that's what you're seeing in some of these online radicals today.
And peace and prosperity states and individuals have better sentiments because they do not find themselves suddenly confronted with imperious necessities. But war takes away the easy supply of daily wants and so proves a rough master that brings most men's characters to a level with their fortunes. Revolution thus ran its course from city to city, and the places which it arrived at last from having heard what had been done before carried to a still greater excess the refinement of their inventions, as manifested in the cunning of their enterprises and the atrocity of their reprisals. Words had to change their ordinary meaning and to take that which was now given them. Reckless audacity came to be considered the courage of a loyal ally. Prudent hesitation was specious cowardice. Moderation was held to be a cloak for unmanliness. Ability to see all sides of a question, ineptness to act on any. Frantic violence became the attribute of manliness. Cautious plotting, a justifiable means of self defense. The advocate of extreme measures was always trustworthy, his opponent a man to be suspected. To succeed in a plot was to have a shrewd head, to divine a plot still shrewder, but to try to provide against having to do either was to break up your party and to be afraid of your adversaries, and find, to forestall an intending criminal, or to suggest the idea of a crime where it was wanting, was equally commended until even blood became a weaker tie than party from the superior readiness of those united by the latter to dare everything without reserve. It just keeps going. This is from
Hmm.
Thucydides, chapter 370 through 85
Yeah.
sections. And that sounds very familiar. That describes the Spanish Civil War, and it
Hmm.
describes the kind of moral or really immoral state of advocates for political violence that we're seeing on
Oh,
both sides.
everything you just said sounds to like the replies on Twitter whenever anyone advocates for moderation or to like get along with their countrymen. I mean, that's the replies that
Right
sounds.
down to calls from like unmanliness, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
unmanliness.
unmanly
That's
to
right.
want to keep parents alive for their children.
That's right.
It is manly to want to kill those children or their parents. Are you
Hmm.
kidding? Like
Yeah.
that's what civil war does. That's
Yeah.
what Franco did.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so many of the sort of thought leaders of these what do you call them? Influencers, they all look the same. They all have that beard like Matt Walsh, and they're
Yeah,
definitely trying to compensate for some insecurity, I think, about manliness. But
soft hands.
yeah.
These are not the people who are going to be doing the firing, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Um, and I mean I don't understand. I hope never to have to understand what makes people do this sort of thing.
Mm.
But we do know that the shooter himself was very politically agitated, at least if you're going to take as evidence what you see on the casings.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, the casings actually are instructive of a few things. First, is that once again, the internet was a source for ideological um, radicalization. And the way that we know this is that not only does he have these sort of references to Antifa and sort of pro trans sort of things. There's also a reference to Helldivers 2, which is just a more recent publication of a video game. It sounds really scary because it's Helldivers, but um, one of the things they have is just like a code you enter in order to do something in the game. This isn't like video games cause people to be violent. It's more just like that's a reference that's meant for a subculture of people that most normies won't get. And the even the references themselves are strange. Like the only very obvious one is "Hey, fascists catch," but the other one
Yeah.
says "notices bulges?" question mark, and that's like talking about men dressed in women's clothes and having intact male genitalia observable.
Hmm.
So, I'm sorry I had to make that
There
description.
and there was a Ciao Bello thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we already know that like online ideological extremism is what breeds this violence, and the fruit of this violence has been, you know, um, a widow and two children who lose their young father, and a bunch of traumatized kids. Um, People have lost their friends, their relatives. So to want to do that again
Hmm.
to innocent people, right? Like these people may be on the left, but like no one like who's like a Democrat that voted at and you at UVU had anything to do with this.
Hmm.
Why are they suddenly guilty too?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting that what stood one thing that stood out to me too is we tend to blame on the right, people tend to go and blame the universities for this sort of thing. But this student, this guy, he only did one semester at Utah State University and then he dropped out. I
Hmm.
don't think the university had really much to do with it at all. It was probably something to entirely he picked up from online.
Yeah, that the blaming of universities for left wing violence is always a bank shot at best. Um,
Hmm.
Universities are usually lagging behind online trends when it comes to radicalization, and they're also you have faculty who are very mindful about maybe their own conditions for employment,
Hmm.
and so in my experience, very limited experience in reading about this sort of thing, is more where I've had the experience in actually working on it. I can't think of anyone who's ever like this that was actually like a colleague. Is that the bad actors here tend to be adjuncts,
Hmm.
who God knows where you're pulling those people from. The only one who really defies that, remember that woman who at Mizzou, like at the very beginning of BLM, and she was like, "I need some muscle over here," and she was kind of like having the time of her life trying to get journalists away from the BLM encampment. I
Hmm.
forget her name, but she's like the only person I can think of who was like a tenured faculty member that was um, like actively participating in this kind of nonsense.
Hmm.
And the reason why people tend to think of the universities like that is because of coverage of people like her, um, when she represents a very small number of actual faculty members,
Yeah, that's right.
and they may teach anywhere between any individual faculty member like that will teach anywhere between like 50 to 100 students a semester.
Hmm.
And so like the likelihood that you'll see them as responsible actors here is very low, when it really seems much more like these are people that are drawing, like the shooter at Annunciation in Minnesota,
Hmm.
very clearly had like insane amounts of online radicalization. It's not because they're reading Foucault.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I mean, I can't stand Foucault, but yeah, it's not.
I'm not recommending Foucault. I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
the only thing you want to do after reading Discipline and Punish is go to sleep. You don't really. It's very
Yeah.
turgid. I don't find it very pleasant to read.
Hmm.
I find in the prose just sort of like needlessly complex, but that's just sort of how it is. Maybe not. It's not turgid. It's not like reading Kant.
Hmm.
Um, but it's not going to make you go kill anyone. That's
Hmm.
primarily um, online radicalization, but also like this person falls like right in like the age of people that engage in this kind of violence, like 18 to 35-year-old male, single, like fits the profile perfectly. Um,
Hmm.
Violent crime committed by people that are male from 18 to 35. I think it's like 80% of violent crimes committed by them. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, that's when your T levels are highest, and you tend to people do more violence when they have high T levels or whatever. It's just statistic. It's just a fact.
yeah, and Tocqueville, not Tocqueville, Foucault, but the opposite of Tocqueville in many ways, isn't going to raise your T levels.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
it's an odd pitch that this is like the result of academic radicalization. The radicalization happens outside and comes in normally.
Hmm.
When I've had students that have been radical, it's because not because a professors radicalized them, but because they brought their radicalization with them. And
Yeah.
so if there's any radicalization of the faculty, it's because a colleague who got hired was already radicalized from a long time ago.
Hmm. Yeah, at least that's my experience. When I was younger, I was in the first school I went to before I transferred. They had like a ed program there. Ed programs kind of have a bad reputation for this. And I was thinking I was going to be a teacher, so I was in that, and there was some radicalization happening there.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, but my experience outside of that, like taking being as when I became a philosophy major and everything and whatever, I haven't had any experience of that.
Yeah, and that's the trouble with speaking from experience rather than from data.
Hmm.
I'm sort of remembering articles from Chronicle or what have you, but because I'm conservative, at least for academia, probably not for like America. I'm not as conservative as like your median Republican, at least anymore, because I don't support I don't support tariffs. But
Hmm.
um, once upon a time, it was okay to be a free trader, but uh, the uh, the experiences that I've had aren't necessarily representative, especially because like when I was at Ave Maria, a very conservative place, you did not see much left wing radicalization going on there.
Yeah,
It
I
was
can
not.
imagine.
There was a lot of self
Well,
selection
you were the
out.
left-wing radical there, James. I
I was. Let's
think.
like the Constitution's pretty good, and they're like lefty. Let's restore the Habsburgs. It's like I don't think they want to be restored. I go ask them. They're racing cars at
Yeah.
like F1 or F2. I don't think they particularly care. Go find a Bourbon right now who wants to go be king of France. I dare you, right? I
Yeah.
don't. I bet if you went to the Bonapartist, Orleanist, and Bourbon lines, you would find no one. Because
Hmm.
who would want to govern France? Look
You
at
don't
what
govern France.
you don't govern France. Um, so sorry this. It's very hard for me to concentrate on talking about this because there's
Yeah,
nothing I
yeah,
want
no,
to
it's
do
okay.
less
Yeah, yeah.
than continue to talk about this. Um, and we didn't really plan on this being like some of our other episodes where we go long. Instead, we just want to point out that the things that draw people into political positions like post-liberalism um, are these desires for a kind of ideological violence that annihilates innocent people by painting them with an ideological guilt. And in this case, even the effort to analogize to Spain makes no sense
Hmm.
because Charlie Kirk was a private citizen and not like some kind of conspirator in the on the right to limit the influence of the Spanish Republic. And there's not like the connections to the United States military to usurp the power of Congress and place them on.
Yeah,
It's just pure fantasy.
yeah.
And the only consequences of doing this sort of thing, aside from James Kirkpatrick or whoever he is at the old VDARE poster monetizing outrage and hatred, is perhaps inspiring another 18 to 35-year-old to go commit more political violence. So
Hmm.
maybe don't post
Yeah,
anymore, James
yeah,
Kirkpatrick. Maybe log off forever.
yeah. And I think I guess for our purpose in the show, I'm going to say something nice about a post-liberal. Um, Adrian Vermeule actually said something the other day on Twitter about how we should not support any kind of violence or revolution or whatever. That's not the way that this should be done. So good for him, because
Yeah.
all his people, that has some influence on people who might otherwise be radicalized. So
Well, and as we saw with the reading from the Corsiran Revolution, that's going to place him with us pretty soon.
yeah.
Like where if the radicalization continues apace, he will be considered too moderate and therefore unmanly. And the idea of integration from within, a kind of peaceful, gradual transformation of the regime, is going to be considered unmanly as much
Hmm.
as a kind of principled opposition to any such conduct.
I mean,
And
we've seen that with some of the social conservatives who were seen as radical 15 years ago, now called liberals by the sort of young radicals, right? The young is
yeah,
the
I mean, they were
yeah.
doing what's crazy is that they were in the middle of doing it to Charlie Kirk
Hmm.
when he was shot. Kirk had pulled back from some of his more um, ostentatious sort of gimmicks.
Hmm.
And at that point, he had two young children, and
Hmm.
you start to grow up. He was 31, so he was on the maturing side of his life,
Hmm.
and so people were upset with Kirk because he was insufficiently based.
Yeah. And he
Uh,
was, and a
Go ahead.
lot of the because of the anti-Semitic turn on the far right, they were the ones who were anti-Semitic didn't like him because he was, a defender of Jews and stuff. And so,
Yeah, and
yeah.
so there is a certain level of dishonesty in their attempt to claim him and his death.
Hmm.
In addition to the fact that doing something like claiming a person's death that way is itself a reprehensible act, right?
Yeah.
The fact that they had turned on him and now only claim him because it's useful for their either monetization or their will to power,
Yeah.
pretty sickening stuff.
Well, the influencers that are most associated with what they're calling now the woke right, like Matt Walsh and Oren McIntyre and those guys, like the bearded ones I was talking about earlier,
Yeah.
they have been not subtly trying to push Nick Fuentes as the replacement for Charlie for Charlie Kirk.
I fully
Yeah,
anticipate that happening.
yeah, and it doesn't make any sense because Nick Fuentes is rabidly anti-Semitic. He's not even apologetic about it, and he's a complete, he's a Francoist and all of these things. So
Let's see, how old is Nick Fuentes?
I think he's like 26.
Yeah.
The thing about Nick Fuentes is he is smart. He's a smart little guy. And he's smart but stupid at the same time. Like he's unwise. He's foolish, but he's the gears turned at a sufficient speed, and he's very
Yeah.
good at manipulating these young audiences.
Another person who's like thinking of making a comeback is Milo Yiannopoulos. I saw him.
I hadn't heard about him for 10 years. I remember they talked about him in like 2016, right?
Yeah, and now he's trying to make a comeback after this. He said, I think I'm gonna come back," and he posted on X about that, and then he did an appearance on Candace Owens where the two of them talked about Masonic conspiracies against the Republic, and so yeah, I don't know. It'd be funny if the two people trying to compete for Charlie Kirk position would be washed up Milo Yiannopoulos and Nick Fuentes, who's
Yeah.
most famous before for being not just a Nazi, but as we've mentioned here when the episode of Victoria Holmes, a big fan of Cat Boys, which is if you don't know, don't find out. But
Well, there was that one incident where Nick Fuentes, he was watching some things on his computer that he wasn't supposed to be watching of a sexual nature.
he was live
And
streaming and he had some tabs open to
he,
pornographic content of the most extreme and bizarre variety. And someone in his audience recognized from the truncated title in the tab, which tells you who's watching Nick
yeah.
Fuentes, right?
And then he blamed it on the Jews. He said the Jews hacked my computer or something.
Yeah, which is obviously not true. And
Yes, obviously
also,
not true.
it was a meme. Like he was memeing it. And like, so even though he got caught, the fact that like the audience is already half implicated in the fact that they're one among them knows about this sort of thing, and so they all just decided as a joke, right, as a half joke, really, to blame it on the Jews.
And
And that
then,
is that's what you mean by smart. Like the thing about Nick Fuentes is that he's also really funny. Like
yeah,
that's a good
I won't
comic
laugh at it
instinct.
because it's evil and all this stuff, but
No,
I could tell he's clever. So like I could tell how
yeah,
like if you made him not evil, he could be like a stand-up comedian.
I can tolerate about 3 seconds of Nick Fuentes before I like start to like dry heave.
Yeah.
But I get it. Like if you're very online, you have a lot of there's this book that I really need to get to. I've forgotten the guy's name, but he's a linguist, and he actually writes about this sort of thing. And he has like a TikTok and Instagram Reels with lots of followers where he talks about how online the reason why radicalization is so common there is that because you're not in person, it's very difficult to develop a sense of fellow feeling and belonging, and so you're having to constantly prove that you're one of the people that's in this group. A classic example of this on the right today is to say, you know what time it is, right? So
Yeah.
that
That's
as
right.
a phrase is an indication that you're part of a specific faction. And someone
Hmm.
like Fuentes, knowing all of the memes and the lore behind him means that you're like a super fan. And there are certain things that you say and do. What leads to radicalization there is the constant desire to prove that you are even more a person who belongs to this group than anyone else, that you'll follow through with it IRL or in real life.
Hmm.
And so this is when they like the old millennial way of describing this is to say, oh no, the internet is leaking.
Hmm.
Right, where you've actually started doing things that were meant to show membership in an online clique to real people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
It's one thing when it's people who watch Rick and Morty jumping onto a McDonald's counter screaming Szechuan sauce or whatever it was, but now it's unfortunately taking the lives of innocent people.
Uh, that happened?
Szechuan sauce? You don't remember this?
No.
I'm Pickle Rick. This is
Oh.
all like insanely cringe to say today, but back a few years ago, when Rick and Morty was sort of en courant. That was the kind of thing people. There was an episode where they were trying to get Szechuan sauce back for um, uh, chicken nuggets, and
Hmm.
I never watched the show, but I think the plot was they were trying to like um, they were trying to either find it or find the recipe. This is not why people listen or watch. I'm going to stop
Oh, it's okay. It's okay.
talking
Yeah,
about
okay,
this.
okay. Yeah. Maybe we should close up now. It's been
Yeah,
a
yeah.
rough couple
If I'm doing
days.
Pickle Rick references,
Yeah.
it's over. All right,
Yeah,
we're
people
just
who
gonna
are
close
watching in
out.
the future, this would be like watching back on when some tragedy hit, and they can see that you and I are kind of a mess because of this all the stuff going on today.
Trying to
This is
finish the book. You're trying to
a
teach.
yeah,
Half the episode,
people
my
are
baby out there was
political
crying.
assassinations are happening. You know,
Yeah,
it's this is like a what do you call those a time capsule for.
yeah. I hope if anyone decides to come back and watch this in the future, things are way
Or
better.
watch us again after this episode.
Yeah, look, watch this again. It doesn't matter. Like I
Yeah,
checked our
yeah.
thresholds. We still can't monetize these. So,
Yeah, yeah.
it's a niche podcast, and that's fine. Although we're getting closer. It was weird. Like the Joel Berry and Victoria Holmes episodes have pushed us closer and closer to us being able to monetize. So we might be able to run keeps ads.
Th-
You know.
There's a chance that the next episode will feature James and Phil Magnus if we can work it out.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to be in at the same meeting with him. I'm not sure
Hmm.
if we'll be able to record, but we can at least figure out when we can record. If
Hmm.
not, then I don't know what we'll do. Maybe we'll take a week off so you can pass out on the bed for a Friday instead of
Yeah.
listen to me tell you about extremely dead memes from 2020.
It's all good.
All right, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon. We'll have these things uploaded usually on Mondays, unless I forget because I'm a mess. Also, be sure to subscribe to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Those get updated semi regularly. We have someone who's doing that as a favor to us and isn't getting paid, so he does it whenever he wants it to. But it's a great way to, if you don't have access to YouTube podcast listening ability, that's the way you go. I'm sorry that sentence fell apart at the end. Um, anyway, pray for the soul of Charlie Kirk. Pray for his family, and we'll see you next time.